Good afternoon or evening, and I am Lynn Roberts. I am the Associate Dean of Student Affairs and Alumni Relations, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to what is our third observance of the CUNY Disability Awareness Month, and this is the first of this year's activities. So I couldn't be more pleased that we are focusing on the theme of invisible disabilities, and that perhaps more than any of our prior observations, we have an increasingly more student-led set of activities for you this week, in collaboration with others of us among the staff and administration, but we really strive to make sure that when we plan these events, that the students who are most knowledgeable and perhaps impacted by the issues that we hope to raise and seek solutions to within our community here at the CUNY Graduate School of Public Health and Health Policy are, active participants. And so without further ado, I am going to turn things over to our moderator for today and our director of our Office of Accessibility Services, Sarah Ingram.
Thanks, Dr. Roberts, so much. Welcome to this fantastic event. So great to see you all. Thanks so much for joining. As Lynn said, I am Sarah Ingram, she, her, the director of the Office of Accessibility Services here at CUNY SPH. I'm really excited for this event, but before we get started, I want to just tell you a little bit about how this all came together. At the end of the last semester, the Office of Accessibility Services sent out a survey to both the students and faculty that the office was serving. And in the student survey, we asked the question and introduced CUNY Disability Awareness Month and asked the question, what would you like to see as part of CUNY SPH's participation in this month-long CUNY-wide series of events? And one of the responses that we got back was broadly asking for people who work in public health who have invisible disabilities. And from that, then the committee started to form, and we sent out a call for participation just to our CUNY SPH colleagues, so that's student, staff, and faculty. And from that, we got quite a few responses from students saying they would like to participate. So fast forward, here we are. And I would like to just say a special shout out to our committee who is all here today. And as Dr. Roberts said, this is made up of students and staff, and of course, Dr. Roberts herself. So because this is student-led, I'm going to have the students just intro themselves. And then from there, we'll do Q&A, and we'll just consider this a discussion for the next 55 minutes. So with that, students, take it away. And hey, you want to go in alphabetical order? If so, Anastasia, you want to start us out?
Yeah, for sure. So hi, everyone. My name is Anastasia Singh. I am in my second year at the CUNY SPH, so graduating this spring. I am in the community health program, and I live with bipolar type 1 disorder. So great to be here and share more about my experience.
Hi, everyone. My name's Kara. My pronouns are she, her, hers, as you can see in my name. I'm finishing up my second semester with the CUNY SPH program. I'm on the health policy and management track, which has been really exciting and fulfilling. I live with obsessive compulsive disorder, and I'm happy to be here and share my experience and have a discussion with, my fellow students. So thank you for showing up and being here.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephanie Mignoni. I am on my last semester here at CUNY SPH, graduating next month. I currently live with chronic regional pain syndrome, and I have been recently diagnosed with fibromyalgia. This was very important to me when it came across, and I'm very happy to be a part of this discussion, and hopefully we can all help other students. So thank you all for stepping up and being here this evening with us.
Thanks, everybody. So I allow you to take it away, and or questions and answers, stories, what have you.
I'll share sort of my experience finding out that I have obsessive compulsive disorder. I wasn't always aware that I had OCD. I definitely had the behaviors. They were prevalent since I was around 12 or 13. But I thought that my behaviors and habits and routines were normal, what everyone experienced. I mean, quote unquote, normal. Like some examples where I could not focus on a movie at a movie theater if I didn't have easy access to a restroom. It would consume my thoughts the entire movie, to the point where I wasn't enjoying myself. That's just one example of something that I've been through with when it comes to OCD. And I think when people, talk about being obsessed with things, they talk about like being obsessed with like Reese's peanut butter cups or like things that they really love and enjoy. But I think that there's another side to obsession, which is, it's detrimental to your life. There was a point where OCD was pretty debilitating. I got diagnosed with OCD last summer, so it's a fairly new diagnosis for me. But I was at a really low point and I needed to seek help. So I did my research and found my therapist, which I'm so privileged to have a therapist that specializes in OCD. I've been on and off in therapy my entire life, but never had the correct care that I needed to help take care of my disorder. So that's sort of how I got here. It's been a long journey and I'm still working through a lot. Part of me doing this panel is to help work through that as well. So that's a little bit of the background about my diagnosis and sort of how I got here.
I could speak more about my journey into this because it actually took place while I was at the CUNY SPH. So within my first semester of CUNY SPH, I had my first major manic episode. And at the time, I didn't really know like what to call it. I didn't really know what it looks like. But I was feeling, and one of the ways they described it is you sort of feel as though you're almost like high all the time, even though you haven't taken anything. And that was exactly what it felt like. It felt like everything was so much brighter, was so much more aware. I was like very like overactive. I was like, I think I spent about 5,000 in like 1 week. I was going on vacations just randomly. I was doing a bunch of things that like weren't really very good. But to me, it didn't really matter because it was just like, oh, well. And I think it came to head when I just started realizing, I'm sleeping for 2 hours a night. My grades are terrible. Like I'm really not doing well. And I finally reached out to a psychiatrist and she was like, yeah, you have bipolar type 1 disorder. And even after my diagnosis, it still took a couple weeks or months for me to accept what it was. And I think a lot of that came from I have like had mental health struggles in the past, but I've had like anxiety, depression, and to me that was easier to sort of name and recognize as opposed to like bipolar. Because I think when I would almost hide the fact that I had bipolar, it was easier to tell people, oh, yeah, I'm just anxious or I'm just depressed. Because I think there was this connotation with bipolar disorder of like, you're kind of crazy. And I think it stemmed a lot from like seeing the way people interpreted bipolar in like media, or just thinking of like, oh, but you're not like, you don't have random mood swings, and having to unlearn all of that and what it meant, and really like relearning not just what the diagnosis really meant, but also like from a place of ableism within myself of like telling myself, oh, I can't be bipolar, like I have control of myself, before realizing that no, this is a real thing, and like I can be all these things and also still be bipolar. Like those things can play, it doesn't have to be one or the other. And it's still something I'm unlearning right now as I go along. There's always things that are coming up for me when I think about like, why am I so hesitant to talk about this? Like, is it really for like my privacy, or is it because like I'm ashamed of people knowing this about me? So that's still something that I'm going through the motions with as well.
So for me, it originally started in 2015 when I had surgery on my right dominant arm for cubital tunnel syndrome. It's when your ulnar nerve slips over your bone and it causes numbness, tingling down your arm and hands. So it became increasingly difficult for me to actually hold a pen and actually type, or just normal things that we do during the day. So I had surgery. I felt great for about 6 months or so, and then it became increasingly worse, more so than it was before. And I continued physical therapy for about 2 years or so, and then I worked for an orthopedic practice, and it was suggested that maybe I get a second opinion. So I did, had another surgery done. They did a revision, and it, again, immediately felt okay. And then it just got increasingly worse. And it has progressed to the point where my essentially entire arm, sensation's very off. So I often can't denote hot from cold. I don't know if something's actually wet on my arm or if it's something cold. So the sensation's really odd. I still now have numbness and pain in my hand. It's actually gotten worse to the other fingers as well. So there's often time at work that I physically cannot hold a pen or a pencil in my hand. So writing for lengthy periods of time is difficult. Typing, I don't often feel my last two fingers, so typing becomes a little more difficult. I've kind of gotten used to it. I've been living like this since 2015, so there's really not much else I can do. It progressed to what they call chronic regional pain syndrome, and it's kind of how your brain reacts to pain. There is a nerve block that they can do, but it's really not very promising. So I just kind of work with it, and I take a break when it's worse. And then more recently, I was diagnosed about 2 months ago with fibromyalgia. I am still working on getting some second opinions. I'm not sure how I feel about that yet, so I'm still kind of working through. I have had some issues and things that kind of lead to fibromyalgia. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks or so, I will get better answers.
I did want to go back to something Anasuya said that I relate to, is sort of learning how to navigate the feelings of shame when it comes to living, with a disorder. I still am experiencing that, even leading up to this panel. There are questions going through my head, like, am I valid to even be on this? Seeking like constant reassurance from like my therapist and my friends and family, like, is this a valid thing? Just because I never knew anybody else with OCD, and the way that it's portrayed in media is just not my experience. There's so many subtypes of OCD, but the main way it's portrayed is everything being neat and orderly and clean. And again, there is a subtype of OCD that focuses on that, but that's not the entire picture of OCD. And for me, I once disclosed to somebody that I had OCD, and their response to me was, oh, I could tell by how clean your apartment is. And it just rubbed me the wrong way. I mean, rightfully so. And just feeling like I need to constantly educate people. Sometimes it gets tiring to have to tell somebody like, that's not entirely it, or like that's not my experience. It can be definitely frustrating, or even explaining it to friends and family that, you know, might not understand. Some days it's like difficult because I also feel like, oh, like I don't have OCD. I can do all these other things, but like Anasuya said, like I can be all these other things and also have OCD. So trying not to be so polarizing with my thoughts is difficult.
I wanted to kind of bring up the topic of the panel discussion about working with an invisible disability and kind of how that looks. I think what we're hearing so far is the living with and understanding and coming to understand it within yourself and the ebbing and flowing of conditions. But how does that look at work? And if you want to toss in the public health aspect too there.
Yeah, I can speak. I personally know so much about the laws surrounding the ADA after my diagnosis that I really had no idea about before. Um, at work, I think I struggled a lot with having, especially coming down from a manic episode and having to like navigate all of those feelings while also doing like frontal facing work in my role. And it led me to have a lot of feelings of like insecurity and inferiority of like, am I really right for this role? Is this really meant for me? Can I really be in this capacity to do that? And I think, you know, it took a lot of like self advocacy for me to talk to my supervisors and talk to the people around me and kind of say, hey, like, I don't think that I have capacity for this right now. And I think like I need to leave. And they actually were very helpful with me. And at one point, they even allowed me to switch from full time to part time just so I can take time off and like really be by myself and like get a therapist and get into like building systems and building habits to help control and manage my bipolar. And recently they also agreed once I returned back full time, they also agreed for me to be in a hybrid schedule. So working from home on certain days and working in person. And I think that would have never happened if I didn't like advocate for myself and if I didn't really, you know, stand up and say like, hey, be very open about like this is what I'm going through, this is like what's been going on, and like I really need your help because I do want to like keep working, but I just don't know how to do that when like I don't feel like myself sometimes, and like I don't trust myself a lot of times. And I think that was very scary to me as like an employee and as a worker to say like I don't trust myself and I don't trust my ability to do the work that I was like hired to do. So it really like put me in this mindset of like, oh my God, what, this isn't just something that, you know, affects me like every couple of months, but this is like every single day of my life. It's something I have to like constantly keep thinking about.
I can speak for me. I know so I currently work for the Department of Health, and you know, I really would love to be a lot more hands-on, kind of going out into the community, getting more involved. I mean, I kind of do a lot of admin stuff right now, so it involves a lot of typing, a lot of writing, and you know, as I mentioned before, there are times when I am really unable to do that, so it affects my workflow. It's not who I was before I had surgery. I was able to certainly, you know, type faster, write faster. So it does interfere with my daily activities insofar as like I don't know about productivity because I've kind of found coping mechanisms. Like I'll get up from typing or writing and I'll do another task, so that I can just kind of get a break there. But with the fibromyalgia, in the past, I would say year and a half, I had no idea that that's actually what it was. I fight through exhaustion almost on a daily basis. I mean, doesn't matter how much sleep I get, I am tired. So, just a simple task throughout the day, like from point A to point B is difficult. But I kind of just use a planner and I kind of prioritize everything. I write everything down. I'll cross things off. So I have a sense of visual accomplishment, if that makes sense. So that's kind of helped me get through a work day so that I can actually see what I've done.
I personally have not disclosed to my employer that I have obsessive compulsive disorder. I don't feel like I'm at a place where I can do that quite yet. But I mean, school and work, my OCD does play a huge part, especially when I first started last semester. Discussion board posts are really nerve-wracking for me. I know a lot of students don't like discussion board posts, but like for me, I would submit something and a comment or an OCD behavior is checking. I would check my discussion board posts once a day, maybe 3 times a day. Did I say what I wanted to say? Is it going to come off a way that I didn't intend to? Did I answer the assignment? Like waking up in the middle of the night, checking to make sure that I did what I was supposed to, like not trusting myself that I did the assignment and that I said what I need to say. Checking is like a really big behavior that I deal with school and work, even sending emails at work. I'm a compliance specialist for a physical therapy company, so I make sure everyone's credentialed and on time. And a lot of the time I have to enforce like disciplinary actions if people aren't compliant, and checking my emails over the weekend. Did this person respond? Thinking the entire weekend, how does this person feel? Like, could I have put an exclamation mark here? Would that have made a difference? It could sound silly, but I could not sleep or do anything because I'm too busy thinking about this. And it really can make me procrastinate my work and submit assignments late because I don't want to face what repercussion that I'm thinking in my head will happen. So even formatting, like if I didn't use the same font or sized font for each assignment, like, oh, I'm going to get grades marked, like points off for this. I mean, it feels really, decision paralysis. Thanks for that. It's just really hard sometimes because I feel like making a certain decision will result in a really negative end result. So that's sort of that's just one example or a few of how this impacts like my schoolwork and my like actual work too. Yep. Thank you, Adriana, for your comments. I appreciate them. It's exactly how I feel. And then I beat myself up. It's a whole cycle of just like, I can't do this. I feel paralyzed. And then I'm like, oh, my professors are perceiving me as lazy. And then I overcompensate by, or even, my colleagues. And then I overcompensate by, sending really apologetic, lengthy emails. And it's just a really bad cycle. So.
Thank you all for that. I'm wondering if there's any audience questions or comments, or I think we're already starting some in the chat here, but definitely add to the conversation. If I may read out loud a little bit what's going on in the chat. Talk to your professors, talk. People are more understanding than me, give them credit for. Then, yeah, I think it's true. Bringing it up, is always a positive, often a positive. Actually, that could bring up a good topic of discussion. When is not bringing it up appropriate? School or work?
Hi, everyone. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk now or.
Oh, yeah, please, please.
Yeah. Okay. So about 5 or 6 years ago, I have a friend. I have multiple sclerosis and I also have several mental health issues, including OCD, which is why I understand Kara, and the decision paralysis. And I'm sorry, I live next to a train. So I talked to my friend and how hard I worked to conceal my MS and my quirkiness, and because I always thought, oh my God, if I find out, I'm going to get fired, and I have to, go to medical appointments and get my medicine once a month, blah blah blah. And my friend stopped me dead in my tracks. Like, I know you're looking for a job and you're trying to not let it show, but do you really want to work in a place where you have to be in that level of constant stress to hide what comes naturally to you? It's a part of you. Our disabilities are a part of us, and not just in this negative way. They make us who we are. I wouldn't be a researcher if I hadn't been diagnosed with MS when I was 17. I'm sure a lot of you have been influenced by your career path and your life path with the disabilities that we carry with us. They're part of us, and they're not negative. They're just, like, I have brown eyes and I have MS. One is pretty, the other one, well, not so much. But they do influence us, and it's really detrimental to who we are and what we're capable of doing if we spend so much time and energy trying to hide something that just is.
Thank you for sharing. It's much appreciated. The chat, makes me smile because I think it's nice. We all just want to feel validated and not alone. So it's really nice to see those messages. One of the questions, or two people wanted to ask what suggestions we might have for an accommodation in class by a professor. So personally, the recommendation that my therapist has is exposure. So it's kind of difficult in my circumstance. I don't know if I'm the best person to answer this, but for me, it's sort of working past these anxieties that I have in my head and getting it done. Not catastrophizing, I guess, like what would happen if I did submit a discussion board post. So that's all I'm going to say, because I don't think I'm super helpful, but maybe Stephanie or Anasuya have some recommendations.
I'd say, like, just be honest. Like, when I would talk to my professors and I told them about what was going on, and I like really described my manic episodes to them. And I also, so the way my mood swings will sort of work is I was having like a manic episode for about 6 months, and then it like swung the other way into like depression for like 2 months. And so like when I noticed those things coming up, I would sort of reach out to my professor and I would say like, hey, just to let you know, I have this diagnosis and I'm starting to notice these symptoms. And usually I would ask for specific things from them, of saying like, can I have like an extension of this? Can I meet with you to kind of talk more about this? Because I like really don't understand what's going on, because it's hard for me to process things in the moment right now. And I think like me sort of like over communicating with my professors has been super helpful. I think also like just all my classes are like fully online, just because I think that helps me a lot better, because I can control the environment I'm in, because sometimes I tend to get like very overstimulated and it can trigger my diagnosis to pop up in like little ways. So if I'm like in the comfort of my own home, like doing everything by myself, it's much more easier than to like be in a space where like I'm very unsure of what's going on and I could like expose myself in a way that wouldn't be from home.
For me, I was going to say, I've never actually disclosed that I have a disability to work or school. This is actually my first time doing that. I've never seen it as such. I've just kind of lived with it and worked with it. But I know in the past, with some other health issues that I had, I reached out to my professors as early as possible, and I can tell you that they were extremely understanding, very accommodating. There were a couple of times that I did have to ask for an extension, maybe a day or two, and I've never had an issue with it. I offered to even, provide a letter from the physician's office, not disclosing anything specific, just that, there was an issue. And I think that's the best thing that we can all do is communicate as early as possible. And the more we speak about it and realize that this is something that, we all live with, and just because we can't see it doesn't mean it's not a concern. So I actually agree with Adriana very much. Talk is all we really can do.
If I may chime in, this actually is really interesting to me because, of course, as the Office of Accessibility, like I have had many conversations with students who have come to me and then decide that they're going to do the accommodation themselves, as it were, because an accommodation that my office or the academy would provide is sort of insufficient. So I think in some of the cases that that it sounds like we're hearing today, it's like you don't actually need an accommodation. You need to adjust based on your own condition or circumstance. But I think the knowing, or my hope is the knowing that there is something available there for you where you could tap into those resources is of some support. That's my hope. But accommodations, well, yes, actually, Val, you're right. Accommodations often do require an official diagnosis, which aren't always accessible. However, I think CUNY has done a pretty darn good job, if I may give us our own plug, of helping students get services that would help them to get those diagnoses and in order to get those accommodations. But I think in the real world, that doesn't always happen. And so therein lies some of the problems. I mean, the laws are there. Is the enforcement? Not always.
I can also speak to the idea of like knowledge is power when it comes to like working with disabilities, because I remember after I recovered from my first manic episode, but it wasn't actually my first. It was just the most severe one that I've had. And I wrote to my academic advisor because we were constantly in touch, and I told her I wanted to drop out of CUNY because I didn't think it was right for me to continue doing this and like being in school while like still managing what I had going on, because I thought it was like unfair of myself and I didn't have the capacity for it. And she was like, no, there's this thing called a leave of absence, which is you can pause and you can just like take a year, take a semester off, do what you have to do, and then you can come back should you feel that way. Like you don't have to actually drop out and just like not and just leave it at that. You can actually like just take some time off. And that was really interesting for me to hear because it felt very black and white at the time. It was like either I stay and I just deal with it, or I leave and like that was it. And to hear that there was a third option was really great for me. And I did actually file for the leave of absence. I ended up not I ended up overriding it right before the fall semester, and just coming back, continuing regularly anyway. But I love the fact that that was even like an option that was there for me in the first place.
So we have a comment in the chat that I want to read. What advice do panelists have on accepting our disabilities and overcoming shame? And also related, coping with what to share versus what not to share. As a result of shame and lack of acceptance, maybe I have trouble balancing not oversharing, but also being willing to ask for help or take time I need rather than to push past limits. How do you find balance and accepting is the short version of this question.
For me, I do a lot of research or education on OCD that's really helped me like understand one, where I'm at, but also that I'm not alone. There's this really great resource. It's called NOCD. NOCD is like the organization, and they have a lot of information about OCD and all the different subtypes. And they're even on like Instagram and TikTok. So they post a lot of informative videos. That's really helped me come to an acceptance internally. Because I've dealt with a lot of shame around it. I mean, some days are better than others. Some days I'm just feeling really negatively about myself. But I think having the resources that I need that help me feel less alone, there's a community around it, helps me feel less shameful. But I totally relate to the like oversharing, but then not sharing anything at all. Another OCD behavior is like confessing, which I do experience. I always said growing up, I had like Ella Enchanted syndrome. If you haven't seen Ella Enchanted, she basically is cursed to like tell the truth or do whatever anybody asks her to. And I always felt like I needed to share exactly how I was feeling or what was going through my head, to like not feel uncomfortable. And then I, as a result, would overshare. But I think now that I'm conscious that I am doing it as a result of my OCD, I can check in, be like, why do I feel the need to share this? Kind of knowing what the feeling is and then reacting, I guess, based off that thought process. But I mean, I still overshare here and there. But that's how I kind of process it. But it's a work in progress. I mean, I think it'll be for my whole life, maybe not as intensely, but yeah.
If I can chime in. So I don't know how many people are newly diagnosed or still getting into their diagnosis. And it's a process of mourning. I've always described it like that, especially when you have a chronic condition. Who you were versus accepting who you are now. And it's okay to be sad, it's okay to be angry, but you have to let go of who you were in order to, get into the shoes of who you are and keep moving forward. Another thing is we need to share. We're social beings, we're not hermits. But finding safe spaces and safe people who we can unload with, whether that be a therapist, your BFF, your mom, or journaling, kind of anonymously. But yes, definitely unload. Don't keep it wrapped up because, oh my God, I overshare everything. I even told people what I had for breakfast this morning, and I did that yesterday and the day before. Just find your safe people so you can share with them. And as to balance doing it and overdoing it, there's this thing called spoon theory, and it's good for mental health and any kind of chronic illness. I consider mental health chronic illness. You have a set of spoons every day, and you have to see what you do with those spoons. Are you going to spend them all working like a maniac, or are you going to try to divide them? And when you're out of spoons, you're out of spoons, and you got to recognize it, give yourself a break, step back, and, you know, relax or sleep, or, you know, don't overdo it. You have nothing to prove to anyone. You're trying to exist just like everyone else, and other people have other problems that are not the same as yours. There maybe some are worse, maybe some are lighter, but you know, we're all in this giant molten rock spinning at God knows how many miles an hour, and we all have stuff to figure out. Don't think everyone else has to figure it out, because they don't. Figure it out one day at a time.
I agree with that. And I was going to say, for me, I'm still kind of struggling with my recent diagnosis, because so many people feel that fibromyalgia is a catch-all, you know, and it doesn't actually exist. And it's, you know, so it makes it a little hard to talk about and disclose, because people think it's a quote unquote made up illness. I can tell you, I have real symptoms that I get through you know, throughout the day. And so far what's been helping me is I actually practice mindfulness, and I do journal. So I start my day with reading a reflection, and then I will write my intent for the day, and then in the evening I will write my reflection. And periodically I'll look back, and you know, and there's days where it's, you know, really motivating and positive, and then there's days when it's, well, you know, I just kind of didn't do all the things I wanted to do that day, or I just was unable to. And you know what? It's okay, because I'm sure other people have the same problems. So I think if we, you know, accept that we are human and not machines, I think that that will probably help find that balance.
I can add to that, and I will say that I think this can sort of be very nuanced. Personally, I had to unlearn a lot of cultural barriers when dealing with my mental illness, particularly because it wasn't really seen as something that's even real. And I would have to like explain to my family, and like even explain to myself that like when I have like psychosis, like that's very much real to me. And it's very terrifying, and it's very scary to be in my head at that time. Um, and I also journal a lot, and I do like a lot of mindfulness to help ground myself, because sometimes it's so easy to lose yourself and to be like, who really am I? Am I this diagnosis? Or am I like, what do I look like outside of these episodes? And I think sometimes that can be very hard to find. Um, and even now, I think like the way I'm talking right now, I'm actually like purposely slowing down my voice, but like I talk like a mile a minute, and that's just because like it's the way my brain works. But one of the things like I've been unlearning is I hate when people will be like, "Oh, you're so resilient," or like, "You're so strong for like navigating your diagnosis," or whatever. And I'm like, "No," because it sucks. And like every day that I wake up, it's a fight against myself. And like I'm constantly in battle with myself. And I don't think people understand just how much spoons that takes away from you when you're having to battle yourself all the time. um and I think, you know, when people are like, you're so strong and you're so resilient, it comes from a good place. But it's like, I don't think you understand that I don't want to be like, I don't want to be that person who has to wake up and has to like put on like, oh, like these are the struggles I'm going through, and I've still managed to do all this, you know. And I feel like I don't want to be perceived as someone who's like, oh, she did all this despite her like struggles. I want to be a person who's like, she did all this and she had struggles, and not like play against each other. And I think it's just so important to remember that like you're a person before you're an advocate for anything. And I think like when we're diagnosed with disabilities, a lot of time people look at us and they're like, automatically we become activists. And everything we do is like a mean of activism. That like if I journal, I am like reclaiming my diagnosis. But like sometimes I journal because I like it and I just like to write. And like I think that should be recognized too. And like I can just exist as a person and not have to be perceived as like a person who is like navigating this every single day. And I think like when it comes to struggling with asking for help, personally, so everything I do, all my thinking, everything I ever talk about, if you ever have a conversation with me, I always bring it back to like anti-capitalism because that's what I'm all about. Um, and I feel like this idea of like feeling ashamed of like not being able to ask for help comes from this idea of like individualism and being productive. And when we're living in a society where we constantly have to be productive, it's hard to be like, I need time for myself. I just need like a moment, a day just to be me and just to like relax. And I think, you know, it's because we're taught that like individualism, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. You're the solution to your issues, you know? But it's like it takes a village to raise a child. And who's to say at what age we stop being children? I think like, you know, the fact that we're constantly learning every single day, like we're always like a child in some way. And we always need that village. We always need our community with us. And the way to build that is to be vulnerable and to overcome that shame by saying that like I need help and I am not the solution to everything, that I need people around me. I need people I can trust. I need people that I can build with. I need people that I can rely on, because it's hard being me and it's hard bearing everything on my own shoulders. And sometimes it's just good to put it down and just like be in company with other people. So yeah, that's all.
So I wrote it in the chat, but I wanted to say it to you. Thank you for saying those words. I need help is, it's frustrating because you feel like you failed if you need help, but we all need help sometimes, and we have to learn to say it.
That is very much agreed. Today, I actually was able to find a way to actually delegate some work to my group members for my end of year project, because I had been typing all day today, and I actually took the day off of work today, and I was literally typing all day, and I got to a point where I could not physically type anymore. So I sent a nice text message saying, hey guys, I've done X, Y, and Z. I left some highlights. Can someone kind of just jump in there and fill in and take care of that? And instant response, sure. As soon as I get home, I'll be able to do it. You know, I'll be able to fill in and get it done. Which it's hard for me to actually ask for some kind of help or you know, delegate something, but I had to today. So today was a good lesson.
And I'm just gonna like throw this out there, but speaking about like anti-capitalism, I think this all like the way we're all feeling goes back to like this idea of like eugenics and like people with disabilities like shouldn't even be around, or like they should just get over it and they shouldn't even like exist. And like so sometimes like when we're navigating our disabilities, it makes us feel like I shouldn't even be having this in the first place, like I'm an inconvenience to the people around me. And I think like that all goes back to the same exact structures that are like even creating the modes for like these disabilities to arise in the first place. And yeah, I just think like every time we're able to say like I need help, or every time we're able to like even say to someone like I don't feel great right now, oh like let's push out, let's like not hang out today, like can we reschedule, can we do something like that, like every time we're able to say that and like choose ourselves, it's so powerful. And it's just like a way that we can like personally go against motion and like really advocate and defend ourselves. And yeah, I hope that like we all have the courage to like speak and like let ourselves be heard and seen and represented in a way that like we're often shamed for.
I just wanted to respond to the other Stephanie Power. Yeah, I hear you about like the fibromyalgia, and I have several friends who have, and I have several friends with very severe rheumatoid arthritis. And I actually teach anatomy and physiology at 2 different CUNYs. And I spend a lot of time, even though I'm not a pathology course, I really try to spend a lot of time talking about things like MS, things like fibromyalgia, and other neurodiversities. And so I spend probably more time on the nervous system and muscular system than anyone else, because I really want other people to have, that awareness. And I love to teach, but and that's kind of why I'm doing this degree, is to get finally at 50, finally get a master's degree to open up more teaching opportunities. But I can say that there's a lot of environments right now where a lot of us as instructors, we're actually not safe. Like we're in spaces where we're not safe. And I just want to say that as a student and an instructor, we're all struggling at multiple levels. I'm in a situation now where I was already a little vulnerable earlier in the semester, and I actually have a student who's an ex-NYPD officer who has been threatening, and it's gone all the way up to, student affairs and the dean, and I come to class with security now. So I just want to say that if there's anything we can do for each other to create more safe spaces, because a lot of times our work and even like advocacy work, like I live in a neighborhood that's not very safe. I've been approached to be a confidential informant. I've been getting pushed into things that are way beyond my comfort zone. So it's, how do we cope with working and living in unsafe environments? How do we cope with that? And where do we find the safe people and the safe places to sort of create a balance there? When we're in a system that doesn't create a safe space for us to even work, and I just want to say that, like I said, as a student with disability, with hidden disability, and as a instructor who, I have one course where I would say 15% of my students have ADHD. And when they come to me and say, you just don't understand, professor, and I'm like, okay, well, I do understand, and I can help you with some coping mechanisms, but it's also very hard for me as an instructor to also stay organized enough to also make sure that I'm meeting everyone else's needs too, So I just want to say, like, again, as a student and as an instructor, and how much I appreciate everyone here at SPH. That has been so wonderful, like Sherry and Sarah and my professors who are very understanding. And just remember, we need to all put ourselves in each other's shoes, right? We're all in this together. So.
Gosh, thank you all so much. Almost an hour has passed. I can't believe it. Any last words? Any last minute questions, comments? This is fantastic. I think something that was mentioned too, the anti-capitalism, this is a plug for our resources that our committee has put together. There's actually one video that actually speaks to just that, that I will put in the chat. And I also want to remind students of our event on Wednesday that's student only. I'll also put that in the chat. And I failed to remind people that this meeting is being recorded. And really the purpose is because we want to be able to share it with folks who couldn't come to the live session today. So thank you in advance for that.
I also just want to plug for the town hall on Wednesday. It's gonna be like all students or like folks who have been students. There's like no faculty, and we just want to create it to be like a safe space for everyone who like is dealing with a disability to kind of talk about it and to like build that community that we talked about, like touched briefly here, to like build that community within each other. So like we know that even within this space here, like we have people that we can rely on and that we can lean on.
Sarah, can I make a comment?
Please,
A plug? Just in case if nobody or people aren't coming on Wednesday, we've been trying to get a disability club for students started since last year. And I'm hoping to kind of facilitate that and move that forward in the coming year. So if anyone's interested, I can email you the flyer. And hopefully we can get that started this year. So I just wanted to plug that.
Fantastic. Yvonne, do you want to put your email in the chat, or people can email me and I can connect them with you, or both?
I can put my email in the chat. I don't mind.
Well, I just want to express incredible gratitude to the panelists today who put themselves out there, and I think without them we're nothing. And really I can't express my thanks enough. So Cara, Anastasia, and Stephanie, thank you so much. And thank you all for joining. It's been a great conversation.
And of course, Sarah, thank you for being the, what do I say? Bringing us all together in the way that you did, so thoughtfully and thoroughly throughout the process, which was, everyone here might not have been aware of the diligence in making sure that, again, we had, everyone's voice lifted up throughout the process and the decisions that needed to be made, and that we had, patience with each other, and that we've all learned through that. And this was very gratifying to me as well, to listen and learn, and hope that we can make SPH as a whole even more supportive. It's good to hear the feedback on things that have, worked well, and I'm always listening to hear what could be better. So thank you all so very much.
With that, we say good night.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, interpreters.